What's your favorite holy it fact? At the height of his success, Pablo Escobar was spending $2,500 a month on rubber bands to hold the money he was making. He also had to account for spoilage lost due to rats eating the stored cash. If a female kangaroo is being chased by a predator and she has a joey in her pouch, she will throw the joey away to distract the pursuer. For this reason, kangaroos typically produce 2 fertilized eggs but hold 1 in reserve. Duck it. I'll make another one. It's a perfectly logical biological imperative. It takes time for a young animal to mature to breeding age. A lot of animals will sacrifice their young so that they might survive, living to procreate another day. The majority of Canada's population lives south of Seattle. Reminds me of how Toronto is south of Minneapolis, and now that I look, Seattle is north of both. Crime rates in Mexico drop significantly every time Javier Chicharito Hernandez plays in a match of football, soccer. Man, that guy is busy. The whole objective of the game golf is to play the least golf. Golfing medals go to the most subpar players. Saudi Arabia's sand is such terrible quality. They cannot use it to make glass or anything of the sort. So they have to import it from other places, like Australia specifically, always selling our land to the highest foreign bidder. Yoda and Miss Piggy were both voiced by the same person. The reason the Bugatti Veyron can only go 254 miles per hour is not because the engine can't go any faster. It is because if you go any faster, the tires will explode. And a set of tires costs $30,000 and lasts 2,500 miles. If you're in a position to buy a Bugatti Veyron, you're most likely in a position to afford $30,000 every month for tires. Edit. Okay guys, I get it. 2,500 miles is more than you'll likely ever do in a month. Or a Bugatti. 7-year-olds have never seen a white US president. And they won't for a while, since the next one will be orange. The True Whig Party won a general election in Liberia in 1924 or so. They won with 134,000 votes. There were 15,000 registered voters. Edit. It was 1927. And 243,000 votes. I don't think the concept of corrupt politicians in Africa makes anyone say holy it. An owl's eyes are so big they fit into its eye sockets so tight they can't roll their eyes around. Thus why they need to shift their neck to change point of focus. Do they have, like a permanent migraine? The ancient Egyptian scarab was what we know as the dung beetle. They were sacred and worshipped, making this a true holy sheet fact. The pyramids were more ancient to the Roman Empire than the Roman Empire is to us. And the Greeks Romans used to marvel at the antiquity of them 2,000 years ago. There are more ways to arrange a deck of cards than atoms in our solar system. A readload more. Roughly 84 billion times more. Edit. Further. A thoroughly shuffled deck of cards will almost certainly be arranged in a way that has never before existed in the universe, including in computer-generated arrangements, like online poker for example. It always amazes me how huge factorial, not sure if that's the word, of such small numbers is. In 1989, a 300M asteroid missed the Earth by only 6 hours. The impact would have been 12x the energy of Tsar Bomba, and scientists didn't notice the near miss until 9 days after the fact. What were you doing in March of 1989? Edit. Grammar. Edit 2. This is Gonads pointed out that is an asteroid, not a comet. Holy shit, they weren't kidding about the inbox blowing up. Full stop. When the oldest person on Earth was born, there was a completely different set of people on Earth. Every single one of them. Thinking about it somewhat differently. One person on Earth has been alive for the births of everyone else on Earth. In the UK, 12.8% of 4-5-year-old are obese. This literally blows my mind. How have they been alive long enough to gain that much weight? Because the parents think a balanced diet means having a sausage roll in one hand and a Happy Meal in the other. Ike. Rin Tin Tin almost won the first ever Oscar for Best Actor. But the people in charge were afraid that nobody would take the award seriously in the future if they gave the first one ever to a dog. Cleopatra's family tree was so tangled that 3 of her 4 grandparents were siblings. One of her grandfathers, Ptolemy IX, was also her great-grandfather. EWW. Her family tree was actually a graph. Teenage male dolphins off the coast of Miami have been found to murder infant dolphins and small breeds of porpoises. Scientists have speculated the latter deaths are practice for the infant dolphin hunts. I used to volunteer at an aquarium and they told us that female dolphins won't mate with male dolphins if they have a pup with them. So male dolphins will drag the pups down until they drown so the female will mate with them. And people believe sharks are the monsters. There are more airplanes in the ocean than there are submarines in the sky. That's called gravity. The largest air force in the world is the US Air Force. The second largest air force in the world is the US Navy. If you consider combat training, munitions, and worldwide response capability, the US Army operates the third largest air force, beating out Russia and China by a tiny PR margin. The US Army is also the largest purchaser of rotorcraft in the world. Also, American-made helicopters' main rotors all spin in a counterclockwise direction when viewed from above, while, for the most part, European-made helicopters' main rotors spin the opposite direction. These aren't holy sheet facts though. More just interesting trivia. It's a shorter distance from London to Moscow than from Sydney to Perth. Los Angeles. CA is closer to El Paso. TX than El Paso. TX is to Orange. TX. They are all on the same highway. Adolf Hitler was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1939. Nominated? He didn't win. WTF. In 1895 the only 2 cars in all of Ohio crashed into each other. And that was the first game of chicken. Neither were chicken. Neither won. There exists a 420mm mortar that rides on a tank chassis and shoots nuclear warheads. The more I research military weapon facts, the more I come to the conclusion that we are utterly screwed. The US Navy is putting a legit, fully functional railgun on a destroyer in the next couple years. Not an experiment. Not a test. A fully combat-ready working one. Vacant homes outnumber the homeless 22 to 1. The main problem of a homeless person usually is not the absence of a home. US. Put a man on the moon before we put wheels on luggage. Mozart transcribed Allegri's Miserere in 1770. Note for note. After hearing it only once as a 14-year-old boy, the piece of music was considered very sacred. Written or printed manuscripts most likely did not exist so that the Catholic Church could keep it in-house, so to speak. The attempt to keep the music private was foiled by this young kid who could simply write it all down after just hearing it once. It takes 2 years for a pineapple to grow. The USAF accidentally dropped 2 nuclear bombs on North Carolina in January of 1961. And neither exploded. I would have been born into an entirely different world 3 months later had things turned out differently. I can travel to just about any city in the world in less than 24 hours. Less than a century ago that was a trip that would take several weeks. Or even months. Alternatively, I can pick my phone up and look up almost anywhere in the world instantly, in many cases at street level. It's amazing. Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank were born in the same year. There is a Japanese person who survived the Titanic. When he came back to Japan, everyone hated him for not dying with all the rest and being a coward. Like how far away the nearest possibly inhabited planet actually is. It's 12 to 13 light years away. A light year is 5,878,499,810,000 miles. So yeah, you got 13 of them to get through, and we have no technology that can reach the speed of light. The fastest we have ever gone in space is a mere 24,790 miles per hour. We could potentially go faster of course, but that is our current speed for a manned ship. So if we couldn't, it would take 351,908 years to reach that planet. And it might have life on it and might be habitable. But it probably won't be. So yeah, we're rather alone in our corner of the galaxy, and if we have been visited by aliens, then they must have way better technology than we do. There are regions of empty space in our solar system that small satellites can fall into and get stuck relative to the sun and the Earth. They are called Lagrange points. And at L4 and L5 in particular, things can orbit an empty point in space. The only thing stopping that oncoming car from swerving into your lane and hitting you head on is that yellow line painted there, and your trust that each of you stays on your respective side of it. Kids born after the release of Toy Story are in college now. That we sent a probe to Mars the size of a car that released its cargo. Parachuted to just above the planet. Released the parachute. Then suspended itself in the air by rockets a few meters above the planet. Then it lowered the probe down on cables. Exploded the bolts on the cables to free the probe. Then flew off to get away from the probe. Millions of miles away. Automatically. Any input from Earth would have taken 30 minutes to get there. When hamsters eat their young, they do it face first. From 1968 to 2001 there were on average 28 airline hijackings per year, with not one year of less than 11, totaling almost 1,100 lives lost. Since 9/11 there have been on average 3 per year, with not one year more than 10 and only 5 live lost. Thanks Osama. If we removed every boat, submarine, and ship from the ocean, the sea level would only drop about 6 microns. That's less than the thickness of a human hair. Considering how many ships we have out there. Give you an idea just how big the ocean is. Finland's current president was in Thailand during the 2004 tsunami. He survived by climbing up an utility pole with his son. John Tyler, the country's 10th president, has grandkids that are still alive and well today. Tyler had kids very late in life and his son also did. 400 million years ago, before trees evolved, giant mushrooms called protataxites could be found on the Earth's surface. These mushrooms could be up to 24 feet tall and 3 feet across. Don't stand next to a tree in a lightning storm. It's not likely that the lightning will hit you personally, but the electric discharge from the storm cloud is so powerful it will vaporize the sap in the tree, causing it to explode like a hand grenade. That's why you see trees that are struck by lightning all hollowed out. This little blip released enough energy on impact when it hit Jupiter's atmosphere 2 weeks ago that it would have killed all life on Earth. And that impacts like these happen about once every year there. And this person with their 20cm telescope and video capture device was in just the right place in time to catch it 35-52 minutes later after it happened, when the light of the event reached Earth. Most of my favorite holy sheet facts have to do with astrophysics. Most things about koalas. Because their diet consists mainly of eucalyptus leaves, which are poisonous. They often must consume their own feces in order to receive sufficient nutrients from the plant. They have an alpha male type mating system. The alpha has all the females, and the females only want to mate with the alphas. Their limited diet also requires a great deal of sleep, due to the fact that eucalyptus provides little food energy. While the females and the alpha sleep, the lesser males must sneak up and force themselves upon the females to spread their seed. This one I'm less sure about. The eucalyptus soil is highly flammable, and it often gets on the heads of koalas, since they cannot reach the tops of their heads to clean them on their own. When they're isolated and left out in the sun, they may spontaneously ignite. TLDR, koalas are sheet-eating rapists that may or may not randomly catch fire. Edit. Thanks for the gold. And also thanks to all those out there sharing their knowledge about the actual reasons koalas eat sheet and grape one another.